Welcome once again to the Cow Report. Of course, this program is coming to you live from the beautiful downtown L.E. Phillips Memorial Library and Taco Stand. And boy, Fred, isn't it a wonderful, beautiful day out there today?
Certainly is.
It's almost like summer. Kind of just went from winter and jumped right into summer, and with nothing in between there. It's amazing.
Hope it's going to be that way this weekend.
Yep, it's amazing. It's amazing, Roy. Can you just adjust that camera there a little bit, Roy? There, a little farther. A little more, Roy. Just a little Todd more. There you go. Roy Rogers Hoff. Thank you very much, Roy. And how's everything down on the ranch? Ranch is fine. Good. You know, he was named after Hopalong Cassidy, Fred. Okay. All right, well, thank you very much, Roy.
I thought they named him after Buck Jones.
Who's that?
He was a cowboy.
Okay, Fred, well, I want to welcome you to today's program again. Glad to see you could make it. How's everything on the health scene over there?
Well, we still are coughing. Last night I did quite a bit.
Did you ever get checked for TB, Fred?
Well, I had an x-ray of my chest a while back.
You know, that deal's coming back with a vengeance.
Yeah.
These new strains of TB. Matter of fact, they're even showing up on long flight airplane trips. They're warning people with TB to stay off them because they might spread it through the air to other people. Well, Fred, we always like to make things known about anything to do with cows and milk. And there was a big jury trial over in Minnesota where a farmer was working with milk and a cure for cancer, and the officials over there over in St. James area of Minnesota arrested him, said he was practicing medicine without a license, Fred. And what he was doing was he would take cows that were that had just given birth, and he would sell them to people for $2,500. And then if that person had an illness like a cancer, he would take their blood and inject it into that cow, and then that cow would create a special milk, and then the cancer patient would drink that milk. And so the guy wasn't claiming there was any cure, but he has claimed that a lot of people have gotten better by doing that. Well, the officials over there said he was practicing medicine without a license, and drug him through the court system, and a jury deliberated for 10 hours, Fred, and guess what? They deadlocked. They said they didn't want to convict the guy because it didn't sound like he's doing anything that terrible. But on the other hand, the laws were so narrow on practicing medicine without a license that they couldn't decide on him being innocent either. So they kind of went down the middle and deadlocked the jury. And so no telling if he'll be tried again, but we would just wish they'd leave them cows alone out there, Fred. They're always picking on them. You know it?
Yes.
All right. Well, Fred.
Say so.
You know, on this show, Fred, we try to ask you a question here, and I know you used to bat 1,000. I don't know what you're at now. We haven't kept track for a while, but where are you at on this deal?
God only knows.
Okay, well, Fred, today is the 13th of March, 1995.
Yes.
And on this date, 1865, Fred, this government enacts a law making slaves subject to draft into military service during the Civil War. Which country did this?
United States.
Which one?
The North.
Nope, the Confederates.
Yeah.
You imagine that, Fred, right here at the end of the war, March of '65. I think the war was over in April. So I think Kennedy or Nixon, what's his name, Lyndon or Lincoln. Yeah, I knew I had it right on the tip of my tongue there, Fred.
Lincoln didn't do it, did he?
No, Lincoln got assassinated right at the end of the war here in April, I think it was. Well, things were getting so desperate down in the South that they finally enacted a law saying that slaves could be drafted into the military service to fight against the North. What do you think about that, Fred? It's pretty amazing. So, did you get that right or not?
I said the North.
All right.
and it was the South.
Okay, Fred, well, speaking of the North and the
Jefferson
South,
Davis.
you know, we hear about the feds coming in and charging people with civil rights crimes, and it's usually a skinhead group or something. There's a couple skinheads that are up on federal charges now of harassing other people. Well, here's one that happened down south that has been kind of covered up because it's one of those reverse deals where, you know, we have this all this reverse discrimination stuff. Well, here's one that kind of got buried, and I noticed nobody's calling for federal charges to be filed here, but there was a family, Caucasian family, driving down the road, Fred, and it was a husband and wife and their newborn child were in the car, and on Highway 41 by Elkton, Kentucky. And this kid was driving down the road, and he had the Confederate flag in his window, Fred. So a group of blacks pulled up alongside him and blew him away, killed him, murdered him because of that. Now that's a obvious case of discrimination and civil rights violations, and hopefully they'll take that case into consideration too, and not just make it one-sided and just keep arresting skinheads and charging them, bringing them up on federal charges. Let's see it. Hopefully it will go both ways, Fred, or all ways, and that there won't be any of that stuff going on from any faction. Because the kid is dead, just as dead as any black or Asian or anyone else that gets murdered in a civil rights violation like that. And now his child's going to grow up without a father. So dead is dead, Fred. It doesn't matter what color you are. All right, Fred, well, we got something else here coming up, and you might want to announce that. There's a meeting tonight, and where's that going to be and what's it all about?
Right to Life Eau Claire Right to Life is having a meeting in St. Mary's Church or School Hall in Altoona. And it's in relation to the proposed abortuary or abortion being practiced here by Planned Parenthood. So we urge at 7 o'clock everybody that's concerned about this to turn out. Go to St. Mary's School Hall.
That's 1828 Lynn Avenue in Altoona. It's right at the main drag.
Yeah.
If you come down, what's that street? You go down the big hill from Eau Claire. Is that Spooner?
Spooner Avenue.
Go down, coming in off of Hastings Way, you head down Spooner, come up the hill, and you're in Altoona. It's on the right-hand side, down several blocks on the right-hand side. 1828 Lynn Avenue. That's 7 p.m., Fred, and that's put on by Wisconsin Right to Life. And there was a small article.
Eau Claire Right to Life.
Yeah, Wisconsin Right to Life Eau Claire chapter. Now, there is a special speaker coming in. The guest speaker will be Joan Appleton, former head nurse of the Washington, D.C. Now chapter. So that'll be interesting, Fred. Somebody from the National Organization of Women will be there speaking about the abortion issue. Now, there was a full-page ad or not a full page, but a quarter-page ad in the Leader Telegram yesterday announcing that meeting. And anyway, if you've got Sunday's paper, it's in there, and the headline was, "An Abortionist in Eau Claire?" ? It talks about Planned Parenthood's aborting of, I guess, 132,000 babies per year in its own clinics, Fred. And that's not counting the ones they refer out. So what it appears what they're doing, Fred, is they're trying to consolidate their hold on the abortion business in Wisconsin. Wisconsin has a declining abortion rate going on. The number of abortions is going down each year. And it's Planned Parenthood's last gasp to grab a hold of that and then corner the market on those abortions before the competition gets too stiff in that area. So they're going to consolidate they're trying to consolidate the northwestern part of Wisconsin's abortion business. And so it looks like they have already hired, the rumor is they've already hired an abortion doctor for Eau Claire to perform them, if they're not already performing them. The big question is, if they're already performing them at the site where they're at now, Fred, where are they disposing of the bodies?
I don't know.
You know, in any murder, there's always a body, and I'm sure they're not just throwing them in the dumpster behind there, because that would be leaving evidence behind. So if they already are performing them, Fred, they're going to have to figure out where to dump the bodies so that nobody sees them.
Right.
Now, I know there's a bio chemical place somewhere around here that buys up body parts and stuff from the hospitals, and they could be sending them over there and having them burned in their incinerator or whatever they do with those body parts and hospital waste. But it's a gruesome business and it's a gory business, Fred. The people that are doing it are legal murderers. They're murdering human life. There's a beating heart that's stopped in the process. You know, at 8 months and 3 weeks, it's a fetus. At 9 months, if you kill that baby, it's murder.
Yes, my daughter found that out when she had her abortion in 1971, which was before Roe versus Wade, and it caused her all kinds of problems after she saw the arms and legs and the head come out of her.
You know, Fred, the meeting once again is 7 p.m.
And that was by Planned Parenthood, or arranged it, sent her to the abortionist.
Planned Parenthood is one of the biggest providers of abortions.
Minneapolis, though.
And so we don't want them to get their tentacles on the Eau Claire area if we can help it. So the Wisconsin Right to Life of Eau Claire urges people to call the county board members, Eau Claire City Council members, and the city manager to air your views on this subject. And it's just as big as, or bigger of a subject than Hartle Road coming in.
Yes, I think one of the things, one of the reasons these things happen, especially to young people, is pornography. People look at it, become addicted, then want to act it out. But you don't see that in the paper. They don't tell you that, and the police apparently don't check it out. It's like a cover-up.
Well, Fred, it's just like anything. It's just like alcohol addiction. When you see the fancy ads on TV for the booze and stuff, they don't show you some guy lying in the gutter in his own vomit. They show you some young couples frolicking along the beach drinking a Budweiser or something. They show you they show you the hook there to get you hooked into buying the stuff. They don't show you the end results of it and the multi-billions of dollars it costs each year to deal with the alcohol problems in this country.
Right.
Same with tobacco, Fred. They don't show you somebody laying in the hospital spitting up blood because their lungs are shot from lung cancer. They show you a nice young couple driving down the street in a convertible puffing on a Salem. So maybe they ought to do that, Fred. Maybe they ought to show both. Maybe they ought to make the cigarette companies and the alcohol companies have commercials on the air showing the other side of it. Okay, anyway, Fred, the meeting is tonight. The Leader Telegram erroneously stated that I was kind of involved with putting on the meeting. All I did was send a fax to the Leader Telegram alerting them that I had notified the governor's office, Dave Zien's office, and Rob Krybeck's office, inviting them to come to the meeting tonight. The Leader Telegram kind of got it skewered. As a matter of fact, I called the Leader Telegram and asked them to call Jerry Anderson, who's the local president of the Right to Life, and to get an interview with them, and instead they just put a little blurb in the obituary page about tonight's meeting and kind of implying that I was in charge of it. But it's Wisconsin Right to Life. Eau Claire is putting on the meeting. It's their meeting, and hopefully there'll be a large turnout to see Joan Appleton and to discuss this very important issue, Fred, because it's kind of the turning point of this community. It's been safe and secure from abortions for roughly 10 years, and we could very well see that come to an end. And we don't want to have, on our signs coming into Eau Claire, we don't want to have the big words Ichabod stamped on the Eau Claire population sign out there.
Now, out at London Square Mall yesterday and the day before, this group, with a number of others, had a stall there. And this gal here might be willing to come and talk about this. And that's on tobacco.
Well, that's good, Fred. We've done most of the work for them over the last 5 years talking about tobacco. I'm glad to see they got a little brochure out there. Maybe we can get them on and See what they got to say for themselves.
That's what I thought.
Okay, Fred, another thing coming up tonight is Sex, Lies, and the Truth. It's a video that's on at, what time is that tonight?
Is it 6 o'clock?
6 or 6:30 on Channel 3, is the local Fox channel.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a, Kirk Cameron, I think, is one of the hosts of it. Anyway, it's a true depiction of what's really going on in with the young people today, and with sex and with abortions and all those, and STDs and AIDS and the whole works, Fred. So it's supposed to be very interesting, and it's been advertised heavily on the Fox network, and hopefully it's put on by Focus on the Family. Hopefully a lot of people will view that, or tell our children to watch it tonight. Okay, Fred, what do you got there?
Well, I got a few things here, and this is Encourager. It's put out by the American Family Association. AFA fights porn explosion. We're in a battle for the soul of our nation. The explosion of pornography reflects a breakdown of social morals. AFA has been helping us wake up to our need to be involved in the fight. One of the tools in this battle in reducing the demand for pornography. I was 11 years old when I first looked at Playboy magazine. It was like an alcoholic taking his first drink. Next 26 years of my life, even as a pastor, took a turn for the worse. I was consumed with a desperate search for sexual activity. Thanks be to God, I was intervened on and received treatment, and now can say that I have almost 8 years of abstinence from this problem.
Well, I'm glad you've licked the problem, Fred.
It was this pastor, not me.
Oh, I thought you were talking about yourself there.
No.
So that was in the AFA.
Mark Laser, Ph.D. He's a AFA workshop leader.
Well, good. Well, Fred, that reminds me. You know, the other day, one of those Democrats switched over to the Republican Party.
Yeah,
What's his name? Light Horse Campbell or somebody?
yeah.
Got a big old ponytail and rides a Harley. And Bob Dole was out in New Hampshire speaking before a crowd of about 200-300 people plus C-SPAN watching.
Mm-hmm.
And he looks into the camera and he says, "You don't have to change anything to become a Republican. We don't want you to change a thing.
Yeah.
We just want people to become Republicans." So in other words, the doors are wide open. Anybody can join. Now this guy here, this Campbell had just joined. Rush Limbaugh was trying to brag it up about him joining the Republican Party. And Rush even bragged that the guy was pro-choice. Now what happened to Rush Limbaugh? I thought he was pro-life. All of a sudden he's got memory problems too.
I don't know.
But anyway, he was playing it up how great it was that they've got another senator that's joined the Republican Party.
Well, I
But all
don't,
it is
I don't think that's anything to brag about. Matter of fact, I think that is demeaning to have somebody who is an admitted homosexual, a supporter of homosexuality, come into the Republican Party.
And Bob Dole says, "We don't want him to change a thing. We just want him to be a Republican."
Yeah.
So he's willing to take all the baggage that comes along with it. The doors are wide open, folks. If you want to join the Republican Party, they've thrown all the standards out the windows now, Fred. They've got all the stops are pulled. Anybody can join. It's going to be one big love fest in the Republican Party now, Fred.
Well, I think that is not good.
It's,
You know, we already have one party, the Democratic Party, who's pro-homosexual, pro-pornography or
Pro-abortion.
indecency, and pro-abortion. What do we need another one for?
well, now it's just like this guy here. They
I left the Republican Party because of those, the Democratic Party because of those things years ago.
Well, now they're opening the doors wide open. See, they've got their eye on the prize, Fred, and their prize is the White House in '96.
Well, it's not going to be elected by, not going to elect anybody who has those feelings. I can assure you that, because I will not support them, and I know not a load of Republicans won't support them either.
Well, I think there's 20, 30 million Christians that got something to say about them.
Right.
But see, they're fighting a losing battle, Fred, because Haley Barbour, the head of the Republican Party, they've already set their course. And their course is to open the doors wide open and to integrate the homosexuals and the abortionists into the party in a big way. And now you're seeing that come about. You're seeing Gunderson out there rattling his saber, all of his threats. You see pro-abortion Democrats joining the Republican Party. You know that it doesn't bode well for the conservatives within the Republican Party. And hopefully they'll wake up and run somebody like a Pat Buchanan or Alan Keyes on a third ticket, Fred. That would really throw things into
Or
a
Bob
tailspin.
Dornan.
Or Bob Dornan. But see, Dornan, he's a standard bearer for the party too. Dornan doesn't care. He's another what you call a horror, Fred. He's willing to let all that stuff hang around him without saying a word about it.
He spoke out against
Yeah. How come he's not
Gunderson.
How come he's not speaking out against Campbell joining?
Well, would the media give him the benefit of publicizing it?
Fred, the Republican Party is full of political whores. We've got some that are elected right from this area, representing us in Madison. They're selling out all over the place. You know it?
No, I don't know it.
You don't? What do you think this guy that just came into the party in Dole making a stupid statement like
Well,
that?
I agree with you in relation
He's
to
one
that,
of the
but you
national
said in
leaders.
this area. Well, he's not my national leader, I'll tell you that. He was one of the ones who voted not only for NAFTA, but he voted for GATT. I've gone around to department stores here. You can't find, most of them don't have any clothing made in the United States. If they have something, it's a T-shirt. That's the only thing they got in here.
Yeah, there's big T-shirt business in this country.
Yeah, but they come from overseas, China, India, Macau, Hong Kong,
Well, you know,
Taiwan.
if you look at the young kids in the summertime, that's about all they wear is T-shirts. They can't afford anything else.
Yeah,
They're all
well,
broke.
another thing is you figure out this is why Americans can't get jobs in our country, that so many of them are out of work. Because when I worked in the department store in 46, and I was assistant manager there, everything that we had in our store was made in the United States.
And you were proud of it, I bet.
Well, if it
Because
was good quality merchandise, I was.
We were the standard bearers. We had some of the best merchandise in the world. A few other countries like Germany put out good products, and Switzerland and things like that. But see, China needs cash, Fred. It's like Japan was after World War II. Japan made all the little metal trinkets and the toys and stuff, and just flooded the American market with plastic junk and little tin toys. And remember all that junk that came in? Everything was stamped made in Japan.
Well,
Just tons of it, Fred.
they
Hundreds of thousands.
also made things of plastic. And when they first started making it, it was junk. But it improved to where it's as good as ours.
That's what I was getting to, Fred. It evolved into where those little toy trinkets evolved into motorcycles and then into cars and lawnmowers and everything, Fred. You look in the stores now in Japanese stuff, cameras and VCRs and computer stuff. It's all over the place.
And video, the TV.
So they took over a lot of our innovations and ideas, Fred, incorporated into Japan, and they just wiped us out in all kinds of areas of production. And now we've got all these Asian tigers that are doing the exact same thing. We got Korea that's done it, Taiwan, Vietnam is starting to do it, Thailand,
Korea,
China, Indonesia, all
Macau,
those Asian tigers, Hong Kong. We're just spinning out this stuff by the ton loads, Fred,
India.
shipping it over here.
I know.
By the ton loads, and
And that's why our Americans can't find work. And I see in New York that one of the fellows who was on a White House staff there was talking about a New York county where 3/4 of the youth couldn't find work that graduated from high school.
Okay, Fred, well, it's time again to ask you a question. Are you ready?
Must you?
Yes, I must. Now, this is March 14th, Fred, 1794, so you ought to remember this like it was yesterday.
March 14th?
1794. Eli Whitney patented this machine for cotton.
Cotton gin.
That's right. I'm glad to see you're back on the right track. Okay, we are taking calls too, and if anybody would like to call in and ask the experts on the panel today anything you'd like, and we will try and answer. Okay, Fred. Now I know you had some shorties on that other deal there, your
Yeah.
other paper there.
I got one here
Little
which
paragraph
I
deal.
think it's very interesting, and this one is by Anita from Atlanta, calling all wives. Wasn't too long after my husband hit rock bottom 5 months ago, I had figured out that I needed help. For most of our 7-year marriage, I had enabled his addiction in several ways. I covered him by keeping silent. I didn't get mad enough at him when he acted out, so he didn't have to suffer any real consequences. And I accommodated him with behaviors I did not feel comfortable with. Now, she did get into a group and got some counseling and so forth, and started turning not only her life around, but her husband's life around.
Great.
And the group was Sex Addicts Anonymous.
That's good, Greg, Fred. I'm glad to see they're getting that straightened out. I think we're going to take our first call today, Fred. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, I'd just like to know if you guys could maybe hash this one over a little bit about Steve Gunderson's comment in last week's paper about bringing a whole bunch of more of the Southeast Asians. It sounds like bring them over to the United States, because if they go back to Laos or Cambodia, they'll get wiped out. And if you guys agree with that statement that he made, how would we pay for all those people coming over here? And I'll hang up the phone and listen to your answer. Thanks, guys.
Okay, thank you. You know, Fred, immigration is a big problem.
It's true.
We've got on the southern borders with Mexico, we have thousands of Mexicans each night coming across the border. We've got a handful of Border Patrol people down there. They'll fill up their car with 5 or 6 that they've arrested, take them off to process them, and while they're gone processing those 5 or 6, 500 of them are crossing at that spot.
Right.
So what I've called for several years now is to send troops in there. We're
Right.
mustering all these troops from all over the world out of the United States Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, put them on the southern border, let them finish out their duty on the southern border, and let's close the sieve. Well, now we got U.S. Congressman Steve Gunderson saying that we need to bring in another 8, 10,000, 20, 30,000, whatever he says he wants to bring in from Thailand into this country. But the State Department, somebody in the State Department made a statement refuting Steve and saying that there was no need to bring them in here because they're not being harassed when they go back into Laos. And it's big business there's a handful of groups in this country, Fred, that have set up little organizations where they get federal money to process immigrants coming in. We have one right here in Eau Claire. I think there's one in La Crosse and one in Wausau and Milwaukee and St. Paul, but they're doing a bang-up business, and some of them people are getting $30,000, $40,000 a year processing, bringing in people from Southeast Asia, bringing them in, dumping them into places like Eau Claire, and then leaving them to sit here on welfare for 10 years. That's exactly what they're doing in Eau Claire. We've got Asians that have been on welfare for 10 to 14 years, just sitting here. They can't speak English. They've been dumped here. They're turning the United States into a dumping ground.
You know,
and they're not doing the Asians any good by doing it.
They say in returning to Laos, our State Department says they're not being harassed or anything. That is not true. They do suffer harassment and even death by going back. And unfortunately, our State Department doesn't recognize what is truly happening to them in Laos.
Well, right, there's a communist government in Laos, Fred.
Right.
The war over there has been over for 20 years now, and supposedly the United Nations has brokered a peace to where they can come back without fear of being harassed, but the Laotians still say they're being harassed. So why not resettle them somewhere in Thailand or Indonesia or Burma or somewhere instead of bringing them over here to the United States. We've got too many problems now with immigrants, Fred. We're busting at the seams now. Thanks to the Mexicans, we can't even take, how are we ever going to help the other minorities that already live in this country if we keep pouring more into the pot, Fred? If we keep filling up the pot and it's overflowing now, how
Yes.
can we help by pouring more in and letting it overflow? Right now, we can't take care of the minorities that we have that have problems,
Well,
or the whites that have problems.
some other nations have to help.
Yeah, leave it up to the good old United States. Just dump them in here. We're the melting pot. But we can't do it forever, Fred. It's busting our welfare system.
Mm-hmm.
Our system is shot. It's broke. That's why they're arguing out in Washington day and night about what to do with the welfare system. They can't take. There's more poverty now than there was 30 years ago, and it's because we keep letting people flood into this country. We're not taking care of the people that are already here, including veterans that are sleeping on the streets. So there you have it, Fred.
Yes.
So what do you think we ought to do with the Asians that are
Well,
kind of caught in a
I think-
catch-22 situation there?
I think they need help, and it's unfortunate that to train them so they could get work, they have to learn how to speak our language, but there isn't the jobs for them either, unless they are willing to work for a lower wage.
Well, I've talked to quite a few older men, Fred, that belong to a veterans group here. They can't speak English. They're in their 40s, 50s, and 60s now. And they said if they can't learn English, how are they going to become citizens? Because they have to know about George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. They can't read English. They can't speak it. They're relying on their young children to be their interpreters. So they've lost the authority in their own homes because they can't even deal with their own children because they can't speak the language. Their children are growing up speaking English or bilingual.
Well, you know, there's another thing. The the Clinton administration got rid of the program that was teaching them how to read and to speak. They no longer have it.
Mm-hmm. Well,
That's
Fred,
one of the things that was cut. And that's wrong.
Alan Dixon?
I'm talking about Clinton,
Oh,
President Clinton.
is he still president?
You know, he is, unfortunately.
Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Chuck. I got a notice in the mail about that meeting tonight in Altoona.
Yeah.
I can't be there, but I plan to be active. But what do you suggest we'll do? And what are your thoughts and Fred's thoughts about stopping this clinic from coming in? I mean, should we bring in Operation Rescue, or what do you think the best thing to do would be? And I'll hang up and let you answer the question.
Okay. Well, Fred, you know there are some hardcore groups out there that would really lay waste or lay siege to the Planned Parenthood if they wanted to. They could bring in missionaries to the preborn out of Milwaukee area. They'll chain themselves to cars, trees, mailboxes, the doors, everything to stop the abortions. Then Operation Rescue is kind of the same way. They'll set up 24-hour pickets. But not only that, but they'll picket the doctor's home. They'll picket the head of the Planned Parenthood locally. They'll picket her or his home. They'll picket board members. They'll run ads in the papers. They'll do what they can to keep it out. They probably would need to do all of those things, and including put the heat on Dave Zine, Rob Krybeck, Governor Thompson, to cut off funding for Planned Parenthood. Why should taxpayers be paying for abortions? And sure, Planned Parenthood says we're not taking taxpayers' money to perform abortions, but they're taking the money and putting it in the same, it goes in the same pocket. It goes to Planned Parenthood. And it frees up their other money so that they can perform the abortions. So the money does go towards the operation of Planned
Well,
Parenthood.
what do you think that should be done? This meeting that's being held tonight was to get the input of the citizens here in Eau Claire as to what could and should be done.
I think that there should be a whole variety of things done. Put the heat on the governor. Put the heat on state legislators, Assembly and Senate. Put the heat on Steve Gunderson on the federal level to cut off funding for Planned Parenthood from the federal level, because they get federal monies. Cut them totally off out of funding from the state. There's no reason why.
Oh,
Either that or fund, give Wisconsin Right to Life and Pro-Life Wisconsin and other groups, give them the exact amount of funds they're giving Planned Parenthood so that they can offset the murdering of children.
well, you know, unfortunately, our 2 U.S. senators here are pro-choice, anti-life, pro-death choice.
Well, what's the one guy's name?
Feingold and Cole.
Feingold is coming up for re-election here in the next, in '96, so he might be a little more sympathetic to the cause than he was a year or so ago. So it'd probably pay to get a hold of him. Even if, Fred, even if you feel like you're spinning your wheels, you should still contact
Right.
Herb Cole and Feingold and Gunderson and Dave Zien and Krybeck and the governor's office, and fax them and write them letters, because that's the kind of pressure that they get nervous about. A letter or a fax or a phone call, they know that there's other people that aren't calling in that feel the same way. So, but I think there should be a whole variety of things done, Fred. Economic boycott, if you have to. There's a way of economically boycotting the doctor that they're hiring. If he has a private business, quit going to him. If there's nurses involved, quit going to where they work outside. If they hold 2 jobs, economically boycott them. Run ads in the paper. Point out the name of the doctor, the name of the nurse that's involved. Point out the names of the people that run the local Planned Parenthood office. Print their names in the paper and say these people are planning on killing babies, and they're going to do it legally, but it's still murder.
Right.
What else do you think we ought to do, Fred?
Well, I think you covered that pretty well.
Give money to Wisconsin Right to Life Eau Claire and Pro-Life Wisconsin they're out of Janesville. And quit giving it to them Republican bums that are giving it to pro-abortionists. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, I want to, this all sounds fine and good, but I want to know what you propose. You know, we need some proposals for welfare reform and so on and so on. And if I don't know, it's like a catch-22. What are we going to do to support all these babies if Right to Life does get their way and everything works out so the babies can live? But who's going to help support them? Who's going to spend the money? What are we going to do about welfare? How are we going to make sure they're fed? How are we going to make sure they're clothed? Because evidently they're unwanted by the parents, which is too bad. But what are we going to do about that? Who's going to fund it? Who's going to flip the bill? Are you going to help take care of them? Are the protesters going to help take care of these babies once they're born? It cuts a lot deeper than just saying let's let them live, or let's not kill them, or let's kill. I mean, Right to Life and Right to Choose. I mean, it's.
You're right about that, but there are people in this country that want to adopt children. They can't adopt them. They have to go overseas to get them. So that would solve a problem right here with those who can't have children would be willing to adopt those kids.
Because one thing you're going to have to think about, there's already, all you got to do is look at all the missing children. Look at the children who have been snatched away and sexually abused, murdered, and so on and so forth. I mean, it's like, God, I think there's going to have to be, there's no black and white issue here. It's going to have to, there's got to be some kind of way to work around it to
there's one
quality of life for these children, not just life, but a quality of life for them. The American dream, it's so out of touch. And so
the American dream is going overseas. There, our factories are making all kinds of things overseas. And why is it?
Well,
why do we let it happen?
Hold it. Let's not worry about overseas. Let's worry about this here, United States of America.
My kids couldn't get a job here that in Eau Claire, and a number of others that I know couldn't get a job that would pay them more than the minimum wage. They had to go to the cities. They didn't want to leave Eau Claire. They liked Eau Claire.
I love Eau Claire. I moved to Eau Claire about a year and a half ago. This is a great town. These are great people here. But there's more. It's more to it than black and white saying we should just cut them off. It's like, back in the Vietnam era when my dad came back from Vietnam and got spit on and got treated like crap, and he said, well, we ought to just line all the hippies up and shoot them. Well, there were some good folks then, too, just like there's good folks in every sect. But there's bad folks, too, and it's more than just black and white issue. It can't be yes and it can't be no. There's got got to be there's a middle ground that we
Well,
have.
we have to figure out what is sex for. Sex is for the reproduction of the whole human race. We don't want to reproduce them, we can abstain.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay,
Right.
there is a black and white issue here, though, and it's whether you're going to kill babies or you're not going to kill them, and hopefully you'll come down on the side of not killing them. And if you just look in the St. Paul paper and the WAN ads under personals, and you look in the Eau Claire paper under personals, and you'll see that there's people in there begging for children to adopt. And why not take this money that's being funneled to Planned Parenthood and take it to open up more not only orphanages, but homes for the mothers that are pregnant so that they do have a place to go to, especially the teens, so they have a place where they can give birth and then put it up for adoption if they don't want to keep that child. But there are
How about mandatory sterilization for the welfare mothers that would be fast?
how about just shutting off the faucet and starting taking care of Americans instead of trying to take care of the world? And we've got our borders wide open to the whole world now. Everybody knows if you want to sell dope, bring it into the United States. If you want to come to the United States and live, if you can get inside the borders, the streets are paved with gold for the people that can make it in here. So
Well, it seems like most of them is paved with cocaine or heroin or something. That really is sad for this country right now.
Well, that's gone all the way to the top. It's even up to where Clinton's implicated in the cocaine trafficking now. So,
Well, you know, another bad thing that's happening in this country is there's too many people want to pass the buck. They don't want to take responsibility for their own actions. All you got to do is check out the morning talk shows, all these like Donahue and Sally Jesse, and listen to these psychiatrists that come on there and say, "Oh no, Billy, it's all right. You murdered 53 people. It wasn't your fault. You had a bad childhood." I mean, you know, this country's in a bad way, and it really needs some fixing up. Don't you agree?
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, caller.
Have you read the book,
He's on.
The Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire by Gibbons? You got to go down to the library and read it there, because the same thing is going on in our country and will destroy us if we don't turn it around.
Well, Fred, the Old Testament talks about it too. It's called too many enemies coming into the camp, and the Israelites talked about that when they'd go into areas and they would, the people that they'd conquer or whatever would come in and start living with them. Before you knew it, they were worshiping all kinds of idols and stuff. Instead of worshiping the one true God, they were worshiping little statues and stuff. And it's called enemies coming into the camp. And this country's been flooded with enemies, and we're at war. We're at war with the drug pushers from South America. Their bottom line is a buck. They bought off politicians and DAs and state legislators and governors and sheriff's departments and border patrol, and they're flooding this country with dope, and it's killing our youth. And no wonder that, and it pulls down the inhibitions of the young kids, and then they get involved in, they get pregnant, and they get into a bad situation for it. But drugs are destroying this country. Most of it's coming in from South America. That's another reason why we need to cut off the borders. If you want this to be
Comes in from China too.
If you want this to be called the United States of America, then we need to have secure borders. That's the
I agree with you.
That's the first thing that a country should have, is their own borders.
And all we have to do is look around at some of the families who have children that are on that dope. And I went to a funeral here a year and a half or two ago, a man 34 years old who'd been on alcohol and on anything, any dope that he could get a hold of.
And that's why we don't need...
killed him in 34 years old.
That's why we don't need these political horrors out there prostituting themselves, Fred.
It broke his mother's heart.
These guys are out there like prostitutes, selling themselves to the biggest... Like Steve Gunderson took $600,000 worth of legal bribes to get reelected. $10 per vote. You think he's not beholden to those groups that he took all them hundreds of thousands of dollars from, Fred, from the tobacco companies and the booze companies and the big fertilizer companies so they can dump more poison on the land?
Mm-hmm.
Of course he's beholden to them, or he wouldn't have took the money. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Hi, I just have a couple of comments that I would like to share with you.
Before you make your comment, I just wanted to let you know, Fred is back. That last heated exchange, Fred must be getting healthy again. Glad to see it, Fred. We were getting worried about you there. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Well, I quite agree with you that it is a problem when the Hmong are unable to speak the language, I think they have a much harder time of it. And there are apparently a lot of older Hmong, though, who must have a driver's license, and I'm wondering, how do they get one if they can't speak English and can't read it and they can't write it? Are special provisions made for them because they don't know the English language, or are they driving around without a driver's license?
Well, I think most of your signs and stuff, traffic signs, are kind of universal, so they're able to recognize enough signs. And see, they can learn from their relatives, can speak to them in the Hmong language and tell them, well, that's a stop sign. But you know, it's not that hard to learn how to drive. That's one of the easiest things, is learning how to drive. But it's a lot harder to converse on the job if you can't speak English. How are you going to converse with somebody if they tell you to go cut a 2x4 8 feet 3 inches long and then sand it? And if they can't understand what you're saying, that's where the problem comes in. But we can't be the saviors of the world. We've tried it for the last 40 years, and we've become the dumping ground of the world for every little cat fight and war all over the world. They say, well, that makes you a refugee, so come to America. So we dump all these different groups in America, and
Well,
now we're seeing the problems that it's creating because we can't take care of the Americans that were here before we dumped all these foreigners in here.
Well, I agree with you on that.
Unfortunately, we didn't win the war when we were over there, and it could have been won according to our general staff. That was there.
Another thing is, if you get so many millions and millions of these foreigners in here that don't have any roots with, and they could care less about the history of this country or freedom or democracy. A lot of the people that are being dumped in here are socialists, coming from socialist and communist countries. That's the only thing they've ever known all their life. And they come in here, and by God, they want the same socialism here. They want the free housing and the free medical and everything.
Well, one thing we could do and should do, we had a program here in Eau Claire. My wife taught Hmongs how to read and how to write. She taught them here, and that was a federal program, and it was eliminated under the Clinton administration. They don't want to help them.
Afraid if we've got thousands of Hmong here in Wisconsin now that can't speak English, why dump 7,000 or 8,000 more in here just because Steve Gunderson's got a feather up his rear end?
I agree with you, but I think that the ones that we have here, we should try to help.
That's right.
And that program was helping.
I know.
I agree with you.
So many times I've said to myself when I've been in a store and there'll be a Hmong family at the store speaking in the Laotian language, and I'm saying to myself, why are those little kids speaking in Laotian instead of English? Especially when you see a 5 or 6 year old kid. They should be speaking in English. They shouldn't be raised up and just speaking Laotian, Fred.
I know.
How are they going to be assimilated if they can't even speak the language? This one of the things that holds this country together is the English language, along with our borders. Another thing that makes a nation is one common language. We don't need 50 languages and 50 different ballots out there for elections. We need one common ballot, one common language. It's just one of the things that keeps us together.
Chuck, could I make another point?
Sure.
Well, I'm kind of surprised that so few people seem to see any connection between all of the illegitimate babies that are born and the fact that welfare rates are so high. Because it seems to me that there's a certain amount of common sense. More young women who want abortions were allowed to have them, particularly around this area, because abortions are harder to come by around here, I guess. It seems that there would probably be a lot fewer single parents who are receiving welfare.
Well, you've got to go, and why do we have this happen? It's probably due to the sex education that doesn't teach morality or teach anything about abstaining. And that's in our schools today, and this is encouraging that problem. It's creating it.
Well,
and they're only using the information that they have. If I was a kid and growing up today, I'd probably be doing the same thing.
I don't know about that. A long time ago, I don't think there was much sex education in the schools. And actually, girls did get pregnant, but they usually ended up getting married and may not have finished high school, which would have been a bad thing for them, but nonetheless, that was a common practice. If the girls got pregnant, they got married. And so, of course, the majority of the girls, I think, tried not to get pregnant and may not have had sex because of the fact that they realized this was a problem. If they got pregnant, it was a disgrace. And now...
Today, it isn't a disgrace. They don't think anything of it.
I say years ago, because now things have changed so much, it's not a disgrace any longer. And in fact, many of them, I think, are encouraged by the fact that, well, they can always get by because there'll be a certain amount of money that they can receive from welfare, and so they figure they can get by.
Another thing, years ago, when a girl had a baby, the family helped her take care of it. They move out of the house now and move into an apartment, and the federal government or the welfare takes care of it.
Well, there were a lot of abortions illegally back before the Roe versus Wade, Fred. I remember.
Well, my daughter got one of
Remember
those.
back in the late 60s,
But that
early
was because
70s.
Mr. Wonderful, who wanted to spend the rest of his life loving and caring for her, didn't want to be a father.
Fred, it takes two to tangle.
Yeah.
And it's a big problem, Fred, and it's getting bigger all the time, and there seems to be less, it seems to be one of the easy ways out is just to have an abortion, and a lot of times it ends up not being the easy way out. It causes a lot of heartache and pain. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Love horse.
And you know, Fred, but that's why we don't need political horrors like Bob Dole out there
Yeah.
telling people that the doors are wide open and come on in and flood the party with abortionists and homosexuals, and we'll have one big love fest and get elected to president in '96. Bob Dole ain't going to get elected to nothing.
Right.
Unless he picks the right vice president. Now, if he
And
picks
he
somebody
might
like,
just do that.
if he picks somebody like this guy,
This guy, and nobody knows where he stands.
the Black Ike, they're calling him, Colin Powell, you know, there's talk that he might run with Tsongas, of all people, on a third-party ticket. Ike. Now, this is a very attractive candidate, Fred. And I'm sure they're just falling all over each other. You're going to be all right there, Fred. I'm sure they're falling all over each other trying to get this guy on their ticket.
Yeah, well, that's the CFR, the Council on Foreign Relations people, are the guys who made him, and they're the ones who are backing him.
Now, if him and Ross Perot get together, there's going to be some problems out there, Fred. Now, Ross is starting to talk like he might run again. He's got about 19, all the polls still show him around 19% without him doing anything. But if he gets in there and spends another $100 million, he could, if it's a four-way race, if you got Pat Buchanan out there running with somebody like a Bob Dornan on a third ticket, if Buchanan bolts the Republican Party, which he might very well do, and runs as an independent, you got him out there running. You got probably Dole will be the nominee for the Republicans. And you got Tsongas, Colin Powell, and
Well,
then you got a
Somebody
Perot.
somebody told me here that down in Texas, Graham outpolled Dole
Yeah, but that's just
by
Texas.
quite a bit, and in a couple of other places.
But the thing is, Fred, if you got about four different main people running out there on four different, or two main parties, a third party, and independent, you got a four-way race. All of a sudden, it only takes about 25-30% of the vote to win.
Yeah.
And then Perot looks pretty glamorous if he gets a good running mate. So anyway, I don't know if we had a call on line one or not there. Nope. Okay, Fred, what'd you have there now?
Well, we got a few things here, Chuck, and this incidentally comes from the Shrine Beacon, which is down at, can't think of the place now where it is. Oh, Necedah, Wisconsin. And intelligence reports, the Russians are coming. And here it says approximately 15 C-130s were flown into a field in East Hartford, Connecticut this week. They were containing Russian personnel and armored personnel carriers. The C-130s dropped off personnel and equipment and took off to a destination unknown. Equipment and personnel was being housed in a hangar on the field, and this is from Taking Aim, Volume 1, Number 7, 1994, page 4. And another one, the same publication, German commanders question orders replaced with Russians. A retired U.S. Army intelligence officer stated that German UN troops stationed here were sent back to Germany. Their commander began asking too many questions about the reason for training in urban combat in the U.S. He confronted his superiors and asked point blank if their enemy in this training was U.S. citizens. UN commanders told him they were needed in the event of civil disorder and to confiscate civilian weapons. The German commander became very upset, stating that neither he or his men would take up arms against U.S. citizens. He and his unit were replaced with Russians.
Well, that's something, Fred, but the American military is rapidly training for urban warfare, too, and the big question is what urban areas, Los Angeles or Bosnia? Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Hi, this is Erica.
Hello. How are you today?
Why is the country being run by old people?
Well, you have to be a certain age to be elected, for one thing, to an office. I think, what is it, for House of Representatives, you got to be, I know you got to be at least 40 to be president.
Well, it's mainly our future. It's not necessarily yours.
What do you consider old?
You?
Oh.
Well.
What are you, about 12?
Huh?
How old are you, about 12?
3.
Oh.
No, I'm not 12.
Well, you know, somebody has to run the country. I'm not running it. I'm not elected to anything. Either is Fred. We don't like some of the people that are running things either.
Who don't you like?
Well, I don't like President Clinton as one. He can't even pick somebody that can get through the Senate to get nominated for the CIA. That's one of the most important jobs in this country for us, to have a decent CIA chief.
What would you do if you were running the country?
Which part of it?
Uh-huh.
The CIA.
Well, the CIA, you have to make sure that you got good intelligence so that you're not overthrown by a foreign power. And we do need to... Whoops. Somebody's stepping on your line there. Well, Fred, we're down to about 2 minutes left. And did you have that little prayer with you that you wanted to say?
No, I didn't. I forgot to bring it with me, and I had it out, too, last night.
Okay, Fred, I'm going to give you an easy one here in the last 2 minutes. In 1900, the Currency Act was established for the U.S. currency, and we went on this standard. What was it?
Gold standard?
That's right. And then in 1933, they took it away from us.
Yes, that's right.
Now, why'd they do that? You were old enough
Well,
to remember that.
they don't have to have any money backing our currency. I should say gold or silver, etc. And that is why it was done. They can print more money, and there's nothing behind it.
Okay, Fred, we want to remind people, don't forget the meeting tonight at St. Mary's Community Center, 1828 Lynn Avenue in Altoona. And the guest speaker is Joan Appleton, former head nurse of the Washington, D.C. Now chapter. And that starts at 7 p.m. And they're going to be discussing the proposed abortion clinic, which could already be in operation. So we want to thank you for watching the Cow Report today, and we'll see you next Monday evening. I've been your host, Chuck Lee, and with me is my rusty, trusty sidekick, Fred Stafford. The director's been Roy Rogers Hoff. I want to thank the employees of Public Access, Joel and Sherry, and we'll see you next Monday. Adios, amigos.